Oh boy, so in one of my recent videos, I think it was the rating update one, I mentioned something about how I didn't like the second book in Jeff Vandermeer's Area X trilogy because it didn't match my type of prose that I like to read or write. Well, and I said, I'm gonna have to read you guys some of what I prefer someday. So here I am now doing that. And my cute cat Delphi, she's staring at me like the adorable little cat she is, and she's adorable. Wanna say hi? Wanna meow? Wanna meow, miss? Okay, guess not. She's not a very talkative cat. To be honest, she does meow, but she's not very talkative. Anyway, I have chosen... This was extremely hard, but I've chosen 5 books from my shelves to paint a picture of my type of prose that I like to read and write occasionally. Some styles I like to write more than others, but I like to write in all of these styles sometimes, and I really like to read in some more than others. Obviously, everything is valid. Golden Mean, Aristotle, or was that Socrates? I don't remember. Whichever. We're starting with The Anatomy of Melancholy with Robert Burton. Yeah, you heard that thunk. I wish you could see a picture of this thing because it's... How do you do inches again? Your thumb, right? It's like 3 inches across in terms of width, which, I mean, makes sense. So it's like over 2,000 pages, I'm pretty sure. I can't tell in here because there's like 3 volumes technically in here, and it switches back to 0. So that sucks, but you know, what are you gonna do? But I'm just gonna start with the opening because the opening is my favorite part of the novel, even though the whole thing is really good. Demetrius Jr. to the reader is just really... I wanted more when I was... Yeah, it's really good. I'm not going to read all of it, because it's 123 pages, but... and there's going to be Latin here that I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation of, and I'm not going to translate for you either. So, get fucked. Gentle reader, I presume thou wilt be very inquisitive to know what antic or personate actor this is that so insolently intrudes upon this common theatre to the world's view, arrogating another man's name, whence he is, why he doth it, and what he hath to say. Although, as he said, although, as he said, primum si nolero non respondabo quis coactus est. I am a free man born, and may choose whether I will tell. Who can compel me? If I be urged, I will as readily reply as that Egyptian in Plutarch, when a curious fellow would needs know what he had in his basket. Quum vides velatum, quid inquiris in rem absconditum. It was therefore covered, because he should not know what was in it. Seek not after that which is hid, if the contents please thee, and be for thy use. Suppose the man in the moon, or whom thou wilt, to be the author. I would not willingly be known, yet in some sort, to give thee satisfaction, which is more than I need, I will show a reason. Both of this usurped name, title, and subject, and first of the name Democritus, lest any man by reason of it should be deceived, expecting a pasquill a satire, some ridiculous treatise, as I myself should have done, some prodigious tenet or paradox of the earth's motion, of infinite worlds, in infinito vacuo et fortuit, Jesus, ex fortuita atomorum collisione, in an infinite waste, so caused by an accidental collision of motes in the sun, all which Democritus held, Epicurus and their master Leucippus of old maintained, and are lately revived by Copernicus, Brunus, and some others. Besides, it hath been always an ordinary custom, as Gellius observes, for later writers and impostors to broach many absurd and insolent fictions under the name of so noble a philosopher as Democritus, to get themselves credit, and by that means the more to be respected, as artificers usually do. Novo qui murmuri ascorbunt praxitellin suo. And thankfully for you guys, it's already translated in here by the publisher, who signed the name of Praxiteles on a new statue of their own. 'Tis not so with me. Non hic centauros, non gorgonus, harpiesque, invenius hominum pagina nostra sapit. And this is also translated. No centaurs here, our gorgons look to find. My subject is of man and humankind. Thou thyself art the subject of my discourse. Quisquid agunt homines votum, timor, ira, voluptas, Gallia discursus nostri ferago libelli. And it's also translated here. Whatever men do, vows, fears, in ire, in sport, joys, wanderings, are the sum of my report. My intent is no otherwise to use his name than Mercutius Gallio Belgus Mercenus Britannicus used the name of Mercury, Democritus Christianus, etc., although there be some other circumstances for which I've masked myself under this vizard. That's with the V, a vizard, in case you didn't hear, I don't know, in some peculiar respects which I cannot so well express until I have set down a brief character of this, our Democritus, what he was, with an epitome of his life. Democritus, as he is described by Hippocrates and Laertius, was a little wearish old man, very melancholy by nature, averse from company in his latter days, and much given to solitariness. A famous philosopher in his age, coevus with Socrates, wholly addicted to his studies at the last and to a private life, writ many excellent works, a great divine, according to the divinity of those times, an expert physician, a politician, an excellent mathematician. Whatever, I'm probably reading things twice, I don't really care. As Diacosmus and the rest of his works do witness, he was much delighted with the studies of husbandry with Columella, and often I find him cited by Constantius and others treating of that subject. He knew the natures, differences of all beasts, plants, fishes, birds, and as some say, could understand the tunes and voices of them. In a word, he was omniferium doctus, a general scholar, a great student, and to the intent he might better contemplate, I find it related by some that he put out his eyes and was in his old age voluntarily blind, yet saw more than all of Greece besides, and writ of every subject. Nihil in toto, opificio naturae de quo non scripsit. That's also translated here. There was nothing in the whole reigns of nature about which he did not write. A man of an excellent wit, profound conceit, and to attain knowledge the better in his younger years, He traveled to Egypt and Athens to confer with learned men, admired of some, despised of others. After a wandering life, he settled in Abdera, a town in Thrace, and was sent thither to be their lawmaker, recorder, or town clerk of some will, or as others, he was there bred and born. Howsoever it was, there he lived at last, in a garden in the suburbs, wholly betaking himself to his studies and a private life, saying that sometimes he would walk down to the haven, and laugh heartily at such variety of ridiculous objects which there he saw. Such a one was Democritus. It's 2 pages, 3, 4, and 5 left. I'm doing 5 for each one of these books that I chose. But in the meantime, how doth this concern me, or upon what reference do I usurp his habit? I confess indeed that to compare myself unto him for aught I have yet said were both impudency and arrogancy. I do not presume to make any parallel attestat mihi millibus trecentis. This is also translated for you. He is immeasurably ahead of me. Parvus sum, nullis sum, altum nec spero. And again, it's translated, I am insignificant, a nobody, with little ambition and little prospects. Yet thus much I will say of myself, and that I hope without all suspicion of pride, of conceit, of self-conceit. I have lived a silent, solitary private life, mihi et musis, for myself and my studies, that's what that is, in the university, as long as Xenocrates in Athens, ad senectum fere, that's also here, translated practically to old age, to learn wisdom as he did, pent up most part in my study, for I have been brought up a student in the most flourishing college of Europe, Augustissimo Collegio, and can brag with Jovius, almost. In a luce domicili Vaticani, Tetotius orbis celeberimi, per 37 annos multa opportunatque dedici. And that's also translated here. A lot of Latin is translated in here, but if it wasn't, I still wouldn't translate it for you. You'd have to look it up yourself. For 37, anyway, what I just read is, for 37 years, I have made good use of my opportunities for study in the world-renowned Library of the Vatican. For 30 years I have continued having the use of as good libraries as ever he had, a scholar, and would be therefore loath, either by living as a drone, to be an unprofitable or unworthy member of so learned and noble a society, or to write that which should be any way dishonorable to such a royal and ample foundation. Something I have done, though by my profession a divine, yet turbine raptus ingeni, as he said, set out of a running wit, an unconstant, unsettled mind. I had a great desire, not able to attain to a superficial skill in any, to have a smattering in all, to be aliquis in omnibus, nullis in singulis, which is translated for you in the book. A somebody in general knowledge, a nobody in any one subject. This is a science for me, that's me as well. Rather know a lot in a lot of subjects than just one. You're better off that way. That's the book, which Plato commends. Out of him, Lipsis, approves and furthers, as fit to be imprinted in all curious wits, not to be a slave of one science, or dwell altogether in one subject, as most do, but to rove around, centum por artium. That's here as well, translated, one who can turn his hand to anything, to have an oar in every man's boat, to taste of every dish and sip of every cup, which, saith Montaigne, was well performed by Aristotle and his learned countryman Adrian Turnebus. This roving humor, though not with like success I have ever had, and like a ranging spaniel that barks at every bird he sees, leaving his game I have followed all, saving that which I should and may justly complain. And truly, qui abcu est musquam est. Translated here, he who is everywhere is nowhere. Which Gesner did in modesty, that I have read many books, but to little purpose. For want of good method, I have confusedly tumbled over divers authors in our libraries, with small profit for want of art, order, memory, judgment. I have travelled but in map or card, in which my unconfined thoughts have freely expatiated, as having ever been especially delighted with the study of cosmography. Saturn was lord of my gensure, culminating, etc., and Mars principal significator of manners in partile conjunction with mine ascendant, both fortunate in their houses, etc. I am not poor, I am not rich. Nihil est, nihil dist. I have little, I want nothing. All my treasure is in Minerva's tower. Greater preferment as I could never get, so am I not in debt for it. I have a competency, lus deo, from my noble and munificent patrons, though I live still as a collegiate student, as Democritus in his garden, and lead a monastic life, ipse mihi theatrum. It's also translated here, sufficient entertainment to myself, sequestered from those tumults and troubles of the world. Et quamquam in specula positis, as he said, in some high place above you all, like Stoicus sapiens, omnia secula praeterita, praesequente vindes uno velat intuito. And that's translated here as well. The Stoic philosopher, surveying with one sweep all ages down to the present. I hear and see what is done abroad, how others run, ride, turmoil, and macerate themselves in court and country, far from those wrangling lawsuits. Aule vanitatum, fore ambitionem, redere mecum soleo. Translated here, I laugh to myself at the vanities of the court, the intrigues of public life. I laugh at all, only secure lest my suit go amiss, my ships perish, corn and cattle miscarry, trade decay. I have no wife nor children, good or bad, to provide for. A mere spectator of other men's fortunes and adventures and how they act their parts, which methinks are diversely presented unto me, as from a common theatre or scene. I hear new news every day in those ordinary rumors of war, plagues, fires, inundations, thefts, murders, massacres, meteors, comets, spectrums, prodigies, apparitions of towns taken, cities besieged in France, Germany, Turkey, Persia, Poland, etc., daily musters and preparations and such like, which these tempestuous times afford. Battles fought, so many men slain, monomachies, shipwrecks, piracies and sea fights, peace, leagues, stratagems, and fresh alarums. A vast confusion of vows, wishes, actions, edicts, petitions, lawsuits, pleas, laws, proclamations, complaints, grievances are daily brought to our ears. New books every day, pamphlets, curantos, stories, whole catalogues of volumes of all sorts, new paradoxes, opinions, schisms, heresies, controversies in philosophy, religion, etc. Now come tidings of weddings, maskings, mummeries, entertainments, jubilees, embassies, tilts and tournaments, trophies, triumphs, revels, sports, plays. Then again, as in a new shifted scene, treasons, cheating, tricks, robberies, enormous villainies in all kinds, funerals, burials, deaths of princes, new discoveries, expeditions, now comical, then tragical matters. Today we hear of new lords and officers created, tomorrow of some great men deposed, and then again of fresh honours conferred. One is let loose, another imprisoned, one purchaseth, another breaketh, he thrives, his neighbour turns bankrupt, now plenty, then again dearth and famine, One runs, one rides, wrangles, laughs, weeps, etc. Thus I daily hear and such like, both private and public news, amidst the gallantry and misery of the world, jollity, pride, perplexities, and integrity, mutually mixed and offering themselves. I rub on privus privatus, that's incomplete privacy in here. As I have still lived, so I now continue, statu quo prius, left to a solitary life and mine own domestic discontents, saying that sometimes ne quid menitar, that's translated here as not to conceal anything, as Diogenes went into the city, and Democritus to the haven to see fashions. I did for my recreation now and then walk abroad, look into the world, and could not choose but make some little observation, non tam sagax, observator, ex simples recitator. It's translated as here as less by way of shrewd remark than a simple statement of fact, not as they did, to scoff or laugh at all, but with a mixed passion. Bilem sepe jactum vestri movere tumultus. That's translated here as how oft the subjects of my mirth and your fond heats have been how oft the objects of my mirth and spleen. I did sometime laugh and scoff with Lucian, and satirically tax with Menippus, lament with Heraclitus. Sometimes again I was petulante splene casino. It's translated with here as with mocking temper moved to laughter aloud. And then again, uere bilis jecur. That's translated here as my liver was aflame with gall. I was much moved to see that abuse which I could not mend. In which passion, howsoever I may sympathize with him or them, 'tis for no such respect I shroud myself under his name, but either in an unknown habit to assume a little more liberty and freedom of speech, or, if you will needs know, for that reason, and only respect which Hippocrates relates at large in his epistle to Damagetus, wherein he doth express how coming to visit him one day, he found Democritus in his garden at Abdera, in the suburbs, under a shady bower, with a book on his knees, busy at his study. And that's 5 pages in the Anatomy of Melancholy. Yeah, the amount of information in this novel is really, really, really cool. And that's mainly why I like the prose so much. Not only is it really well written, but there's so much information in here. Some of it proven false over time, because, this was published back in the 1600s. So there's a lot of information in here that science has proven wrong over time, but overall it's very much an encyclopedic novel. Very much so. Anyway, next I'm gonna take a drink because my throat needs it. Alright, next up is Fables, Alexander Thoreau. Not this book specifically, just Alexander Thoreau's prose in general. But I don't have a physical copy of Darkenville's Cat, even though it's my favorite book. It's my favorite book ever right now. But I only have a digital copy of it, because the physical copies are over $100. Every single one I found is over $100 just to get, because it's out of print, which is a fucking shame. And I just say, it's a shame. The main reason for that, is because of the villain of the book, Dr. Crucifer, who spouts some very, very disgusting takes on women. He's very much a misogynist, and he's supposed to be the villain of the story, so the fact that that's the reason it's out of print is really stupid and retarded. Anyway, on to reading some pages of this, and thankfully the first story in here is only 4 pages, so I can just read one of the stories. And yeah, really, really like Alexander Thoreau's prose. If you find him problematic, then well, you can fuck right off. It's all I'm going to say. You can just fuck right off. Yeah, I'm just going to read one of the stories in here, which is the first one, which is the cynocephalic waif. Outside, it was 1554. A waif named Gremlina, who couldn't even smush an ant, desperately walked over the blue snows of medieval Russia on her little printless feet, seeking justice. She had a head shaped just exactly like an onion. Cheated by nature, Gremlina further suffered the anomalous problem of being both fat and thin-skinned. Oh, what a swift, what an awful circuit! Oh, lost, she cried at the grave of her parents in the potter's field and wrung her arms. Should she hurl herself into the river bog and simply have done? Instead, unloved Gremlina nightly flung herself with knotted hands at the stoop of the steepleless monastery of Our Lady of Spazo, Yefimov, and humbly wailed, Zhitler, Zhitler, meaning, no one could say, orphans or riddles, but the ears of God were surely filled with sobs. Even her little sister, Zizi, born Euphraxia, was gone, having injudiciously one cruel frost poisoned herself by eating some phosphorus matches she found in the way. Meanwhile, the mighty Tsar, Ivan the Terrible, had set a decree far and wide in the realm that all architects instantly come to the Kremlin and show him their new designs for the steeples of Russia. They trembled. "I am sore afraid," said one. "What is to be done?" screeched the Tsar. It was the age-old Russian question. The Tsar was around the loop with anger, kicked cushions and gulped villainous cups of coffee, for none of the architects could answer. Heads rolled. Some were mercifully eradicated by official fire. Everyone in court had the sullens, even the jester, Grok the sequester, cowered, having failed to amuse the Tsar with his musical swinet, fulsome bell shakes and whipped tops. One dry-as-dust functionary presented his plan with a church steeple shaped like a mitten. The question now was, would it wash? Twaddle, artificial rain, lesions, howled the Tsar, and flung out of the throne room greatly disappointed. Unhinged, some said. Gone Asiatic, said others, and some absolutely bats. Time passed. By day, Gremlina cruised past the quays and wistfully watched the oarage of birds' wings. At night, she wandered, and with a lump in her throat, searched the gutters of this exitless world for umbles, lollies, and discarded suckets, too afraid to sleep, which caused bad dreams innumerable. Of nixies, monopods, dangerous wishnicks, yelpies, archdruids, onocentaurs, craxen, thwitchets, snools, pea and thimblemen, and crazed boars from the Urals, horned, tusked, hoofed, bristled, and befanged, or the frost giants who roam the ice-bound mountains. But her worst dream wasn't one. It was real. It was her head, which was shaped just exactly like an onion. Once a gentleman, clacking his loose, wobbly dentures, set his cap at Gremlina in a dark alley, rubbed his hands, and approaching her, lickeringly whispered, "O Nymphadora, my love." It brought a blush of shame to the cheek of modesty, until he spot her head and, recoiling, cursed his fate in no uncertain terms. Then one rare, i.e. sunny, day, the happy Tsar rumbled forth past the crowd in a carriage drawn by prancing coursers, emplumed, and suddenly noticed a strange shadow cast against the snow. It was the lengthened shadow of Gremlina's head. "Halt!" he cried in Russian. "Halt!" People were agoggle. Through the carriage door a regal finger was pointing directly at little knurled Gremlina. Immediately, mustachioed guards in huge shakos lifted her aboard and swept her off at a gallop to the chambers of the Kremlin, where she proudly sat, fresh as an apple, while the royal architects, those who remained, scratched away at their drawing boards night and day, repeating, "Litera occidit spiritus vivificat. The steeples over all Russia from that day to this, modelled on Gremlina's head, were henceforth shaped just exactly like onions. Gremlina, now famous and loved by all, ate buttered rock buns, owned swans, and even went for walks in the button garden of the Tsar, who sometimes held her hand. One afternoon she was created a duchess. She became the bequest to the nation. So yeah, that's that story. So yeah, I mean, wasn't bio, it was only 3, but you know, you get the idea. Thoreau's prose is very much like that, except at points it gets even better than that, and I love his work so much. I mean, there's a reason Dark and Will's Cat is my favorite novel. It is so good. It is really good. It's a really good novel. Oh boy, the next one's going to be controversial and probably make people call me a pretentious a-holes if they didn't already call me out for not wanting to translate Latin for you, despite the fact it's a dead language. Oh boy, can't wait to get called pretentious again. I love being called that. It's very fun, actually. Next up is Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce. I was considering just doing Ulysses for this because, quite frankly, I prefer Ulysses, but Ulysses overall, 5 pages, would not even come close to explaining why that book is so good, because it's so varied. It's so varied over the entire novel that it would be basically impossible for 5 pages to only... For just 5 pages to only do. There's no way. There's no way I could do that and missell Ulysses like that. So I chose Finnegan's Wake instead, which is the same over the entire course of the novel. So, you know, that's great. No having to do a preface about how the entire novel isn't the same, like with Ulysses, because Ulysses is full with different literary techniques and styles and different... It's so good. Read Ulysses. Heck, read Finnegan's Wake. Anyway, 5 pages. No, just drink. I spilled all over myself like an idiot. Of course I did. Anyway, I'm going to do a shitty accent now, because that's the best way to read this, even if it's in your head, by the way. River run past Eve, oh boy. It's a terrible accent, I know. River run past Eve and Adams from swirl of shore, the bend of bay brings us by commodious viscous of recirculation, back to health, castle, and environs. Sir Tristram, Viola de Amores, for over the short sea had passing corps re-arrived from North America, on this side the scraggy isthmus of Europe Minor to wield or fight his pensolate war. Nor had topsoilers rocks by the Strimokany exaggerated themselves to Lawrence County, Georgials, while they went doubling their mumper all the time. Nor of us from a fire bellows mish mish to toff thwat Patrick. Not yet, the venison after, had a kiskad button-ended, a bland old Isaac, not yet. The walls fair and Venacy, where Sosie Sethers Ruth with Twone Nathanjo, that a peck of posmalt with gem or shen brewed by arclight and rory end, to the regan brow was to be seen ringsome on the aquaface. Oh boy, Thunder Word 1. Fuck, let's see if I can remember how to... Okay. The foe. Baba the Gol Garakta Kamiran Khan Tanaran Twan Trovar Hanskan Toraden and Thanuk. Of a once Wall Street old par, his retailed early in bed and later on life down through all Christian minstery. The great fall of the oft wall entailed, at such short notice, the 5th shoot of Finnegan. Solid man, that Humpty Hill head of himself, promptly sends an unquiring one, well to the west in quest of his tumty-tum toes, and their upturned pike pointing places at the knockout in the park where oranges have been laid to rust upon the green, since Devlin's first loved Livy. Oh, I skipped the page by accident. What clashes here of Wills Gent wads, Ostergogs, Gaggin, Fishy oh god, how am I gonna do this? Brekek, kekek, kekek, clocks, ola, quala. I don't know, the entire book is hard to read. Where the Battlearies partisans are still out to master Malicus McGranus and the Verdons catapulting the cannibalistics out of the Hortaboys of Hoodyhead, Assegates, and Boomerenstrums, Sadsbruth be me fear. Sing Lorien save, arms appeal with varms appalling, killy atoll. What chance cuddlies, what castles aired and ventilated, what bid me to love seduced, by what to goat absolvers, what true feeling for their hair, with what strong voice of false shake-up. Oh, here now, Hoth sprawled met the dusk, the father of fornicationists, but, oh my shining stars and body, how had fain spained most high heaven the sign sky of soft advertisement, but was is, suit, ere were sewers. The oaks of old now they live in peat, yet alms leap where asks lay. Fall if you will, rise if you must, and none so soon. Either shall the force for the nonce come to a set down secular Venetius. Big Meister Finnegan of the stuttering hand, Freeman's mother, lived in the broadest way immorganable in his rushlit to furrow back from his soges, from Joshin judges and given us numbers, or Helveticus committed Deuteronomy. I love that. It's great. Goes Joshua judges numbers yeah, it's great. One yesterday was sternly struck his tat in a tub for to watch the future of his fates, but ere he swiftly stuck it out again, by the might of Moses, the very water was evaporated, and all the Guinnesses had met their exodus, so that, ought to show you what a penshantly chap he was. And during 90 odd years, this man of hod cement and edifices, in Topers, Thrope piled buildings, Spura Bildung, upon the banks for the livers by the Songso. He had a little fiffy Annie Ogd, the little crater. Thither hair in Hons took up your part in her, oft while Balbulis mither ahead, with goodly troweling grasp and ivor-oiled overalls, which he habitually fancied. Like Horan Childeric Egbert, he would caligulate by multicabulas, the altitude and malitude, until he seesaw by neat light of the liquor, where twin 'twas born, his round head staple of other days, the rise and undress masonry upstanded, joy granted, a wall worth of skyer scrape of most Eiffel hoith and towery, in irrigating from next to nothing, and celescalating the hymnals and all. Oh my god, okay. Hierarchiticatop loftical, with a burning bush abob off his bubble top, and with thorns of toolers glittering up and tumbles of buckets cloitering down. Of the first was he to bear arms in the name, Vasali Bushlog of Risgenborg, his crest of Holrodry invert with ancillars Trublant Argent, a Hagok Porcevant horrid horned, his Scutchum fest with archers strong Helio of the second. Hutch is for the husbandman handling his hoe. Ho, 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 Mr. Finn, you're going to be Mr. Finn again. Come day morn, and oh your wine, Sunday's eve and all your vinegar, ha ha ha, Mr. Fun, you're going to be thinned again. So yeah, I just want you to know that literally no one except Joyce knew the right way to read this. So I don't want to hear anyone. Yeah. Any other fans of this novel come at me because I've read it like 3 times now. So yeah, whatever. What then Agent Like brought about that Tragody Thunders Day, this municipal sin business? Our clubhouse still rocks. As ear witness to the thunder of his Arafatas, but we hear also through successive ages that Shebi Korush of uncalified muzzle missile hymns that with black god eyes the white stone ever turtled out of heaven. Stay us wherefore in our search for tightiousness. O sustainer, what time we rise and when we take up to tooth make and before we lump down upon our leather bed in the night and at the fading of the stars. For a nod to the Nabir is better than a wink to the Wabsanti. Other ways, ways like the Prose scoffing, the down in the Jebel and the Egyptian sea. Crop herb the crunch bracken shall decide. Then we'll know it the feast is a Friday. She has a gift of seek on sight and she all casually answers helpers. The dreary deary heed, it may have been a misfired brick as some say, or it mote have been due to a collapsis of his back promises as others looked at it. There extant by now 1001 stories all told of the same. And so sore did Abe it Davies, Hollery apples, what with the Walhal's horrors of Rose rights, Corhacks, Stonigans, Kistvanes, Tromtrees, Thurgubbullers, Otto Canotons, Hippo Habilis, Street Fleets, Torrinaxes, Megafogs, Circuses, and Wards Motes, and Basilarks, and Aeropagods, and the Hosts, and the Jolly Brule, and the Peeler, and the Coat, and the Mecklenburg bitch biteth his ear, and the Merlin Burrow. Borax and his 4 old poorcoats, the more the bore. And, okay. Light black working stacks at 12 pins a dozen, and the Nubabuses sliding around safety First Street, and the dairy jelbies snooping around Telno Taylor's corner in the fumes and the hopes and the strump-a-thump of his vials. Of his Veal's indigenous rom-keepers, home-sweepers, dumb-creepers, thrum and fancy mud around, and all the uproar from all the affrews, a roof for May and a reef for Hugh, but under his bridge suits Tony. One warning filt tippling full, his howled heavy, his hold it did shake. There was a wall of course in erection, dim. He stuttered from the latter. Dumb. He was dead. Dumb. Mastabatum. When a mon marries his lute is all long for all the world to see. She's, I should see, McCool, ora via, vidid of a trying Thursday morning. Sobs they sided at Filligan's Christmas week. All the Holavons of the nation prostrated in their consternation and all their dual dismally profusive plethora of ululation. There was plums and grums and sheriffs and shithers and raiders and cinnamon too, and they all gined in with the shoutmost shovility. Agog and Magog and the round of them agrog, to the continuation of that celebration until Hanan Hoonigan's extermination, some in Kin Karas more, Con keening, bellying him up and filling him down. He's stiff but he's steady. He's priamulm. 'Twas he was the decent, gay labouring youth, sharpen his pilliskin, tap up his byre. Era where in this world would ye hear such a din again, with their deep brow fundigs, and the dusty fiddles they laid him Bradon aglanced his bed, with a bock of lips, with a bucklips of Finsky bore his feet, and a bottle-lord of Guinness o'er his head. Tea the total of the fluid hang the twaddle of the fuddled o. Hurrah! There is but young leave for the owl globe wheels in view, which is tautologically the same thing, will him a being so on the flounder of his bulk like an overgrown babeling. Let we peeps see at home, we'll see PG alti alt Patherplate he home. From Shopolist to Ballywick, or from Ashton to Bournemouth, or from the by the banks to round the head, or from the foot of the bill to the arrogance eye he calmly extensilizes, and all the way a horn, from fjord to fjell his bay winds, obobos shall wail him, rock-bound, ho, 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 in swim, swam, swan, and all the livy-long night, the dale dappling night, the night of blurry bills, he split a flute in drucky drockies. O Carina, wake him, with her Isavan, her Essavans, and her Pater Jack Mortons all about them ins and ooze, telling a tale of a Tom, telling a tale of a theory 30 toblin, grace before glutton. For what we are, gifts are gross if we are about to believe, so pull the beg and pass the kish for cross sake. Omen, so sighs. Grandpa Puss is fallen down, but Granny spreads the board. Vase on the joint of a dish, fin, fo from the fush, vase be his bacon head. A loaf of Singpantry's Kennedy bread, and vase hitched a hope in his tail. A glass of O'Donnell's famous old Dublin ale, but lo, as you would quaff his frowst off and sink teeth through the pith of a flower-white bully. Behold of him as behemoth, for he is no with mo. Finishy, only a photograph of a yestersane, almost rubicund Salamosar ancient formuth the ages of the Aga Apomendes. He is swollen in our midst, woe becanned and packed away, so that meal's dead off, for someone schluck slicing good rit hearing. So may we not see still the brontoikieth and form outlined a slumbered, even in our own night time by the sedge of the troutling stream that Bronto loved and Brunto as a lean on. Hic cubat idealis, apud liberatum parvulum. What if she be in flags or flitters, reeky rags or Sunday choices, with a mint of mines or beggar a pennyweight? Ah, sure, we all love little Annie Rui, or we mean to say, love little Honoree, when under her brella mid-petal, she nanny goes, nancing by, yo, Bunt alone slaps you snores, upon Ben Heather in Seepleisle too, that chronic head on him, caster of his reasons, peer youther in yon mist, hoof? His clay feet swarded in verdigras stick up stork where he last fell on them. By the mud of the magazine vol, where our Maggie seen all, with her sister in shawl. Well over against this Bell's alliance stood beyond ill 60, Ololdill. Bagsides of the fort, bomb, tarabom, lurk the ambushes, the sight of the leafing in wait of the upjock and Hockums. Hence, when the clouds roll by Jamie, a proud's eyes view is, and that's 5 pages, and I'm glad it's 5 pages, because, wow, that accent was hard to keep up for that long. But yeah, you get the idea, that's Finnegan's Wake, but, I love it. The reason it's like prose I like to read is because it's so inventive, and it's so I don't give a fuck what you think. This is how I'm gonna write this novel. No one can tell me otherwise. That's the reason I like it so much. It's just the pure fuck you. I'm gonna write what I want. Screw if people understand it. Attitude that Joyce had when he wrote that. It's great. I love writers that are like that just say fuck the reader. I'm gonna write what I want. Anyway, there's one other thing that I wanted to do, because it's so speaking of Finnegan's Wake, just so you know that I actually fucking read it 3 times, I have some fucking proof here that I can't show you, but I can read it to you because, yeah. Right. Here is all of the thunder words in Finnegan's Wake read out loud for you, hopefully. I do them correctly. I mean, I already did the first one. Babadago Garakta Kamiran Kan Bran Tanran Twan Thun Shovar Hanskan Torden in Thurnak. Babadago Garakta Kamiran Kan Bran Tanran Twan Thun Truvar Hanskan Torden in Thurnak. There. Twice. Second one. Brakadhusk. No. Brakadus Karun. Bargrura Goleir Gram Gremet Grunther Thruma Thuna Raditili Feditili Balloon Uknun. There's that one. Oh boy. Click clack lack clack last class patch clatcha bata kapakati grandog semisami nuth applaudi kumpakat. That's the third one. Oh boy. Oh, my favorite one next. Fourth one. Bliniuk foul Mukpenburg hora scora strumpa pornini cuxa pastor put nerk. Wow, butchered it. Crap. Whatever. Bliniuk foul Mukpenburg hora scora strumpa pornini cuxa pastor tipper strip put nerk. There. Better. Sixth one, for some reason. I don't know where the fifth one went. Lucadoren Dorandaras, Cludi Lushu, Firmapurder, Torizori, Swaneborten, Sportiogen, Sakrodvorsh kaput. There's that. Where's the eighth and the seventh and eighth? What the hell? It's the ninth now. Whatever. Huston, Haston, Kaffen, Coffin, Tussum, Possum, Dama, Daman, Kusag, Kusag, Abixatu, Pishwick, Pishbekus, Kishal, Kabarak. And, okay, 10th one. At least that was a 9th, 9th, and 10th. I don't know how many other ones, but they were in here, I think. Ulfad, Tordenvir, Mudgard, Gringir, Roder, Molnir, Fenra, Luki, Loki, Bumiga, Bogimund, Oderen, Surta, Krimgurn, Lock and the Rocker. Yeah, and I fucking dissected them into their meanings, but I'm not gonna make you go through that, because this was supposed to be me reading 5 books that illustrate my prose style, and I just did that, whatever. Anyway, next of the 5 books is William H. Gass's The Tunnel. I've read this book twice, once in just sporadic long sections over like a 3 or 4 weeks, I think, and then last October, I did like 20-ish pages, 21 pages a day, because the book is 652 pages long. 652 divided by 31, 621. So yeah, I read 21 pages a day in October last year. Anyway, for this one, I'm not starting from the beginning. Starting from page 9. Right. Okay. Honestly, I might just do 4 pages for this one, because, yeah. Anyway. There's death in every diary. I found it there the way I found so many words, lying silent and forgotten like old shoes stiffening in a closet, or moving at the approach of my eye like a spider in a toolbox. As though some small piece of metal were alive. Wasn't there a day in infancy when such a startle would have made my limbs splash open? I picked up my dropped life in this calamitous century's 67th year. A year windy with unreason, noisy with nonsense and meaningless milling. A year like the last, just right for a decade as mired in morality as a circus in mud, as infested with fakes as a fair. Perhaps it's only a trampled package in the street, this life I pick up, and maybe my writing is its furtive unwrapping. In a diary you may go to greet death in the most slovenly state of undress and disease, your language out of reach of any public reading, your own eye kind, accustomed to your own wastes and malodorous ailments, almost incapable of offense, incurably forgiving. You may write without anyone's whining that the day was not only mild, but warm as well. You can pointlessly infer that if the rain came pelting into W.M.'s room, it must have been a rainy night indeed. And you can inadvertently say something beautiful containing ash leaves and never register what you saw of the storm or felt about love in your brothered bed, or say that you swept along your sleeping arm, or signify how well you grasp the sense of what you said. So I wonder why I've lived so much of my life in a chair the way I wonder at the daily disappearance of my chin, without surprise, without question or answer, because loneliness is unendurable elsewhere. Here it may be sat through, if not stood. Here it may be occasionally relieved, like a crowded bowel. Here it may be handled like a laboratory mouse, so tenderly it squeaks only from the pressures of its own inner fears. And here that loneliness may be shaped the way the dumb lump of clay was slapped to speech in the divine grip. We were late among the living, but by the time God got to us, ice was already slipping from the poles as if from an imperfectly decorated cake. The stars and planets were out of sync. Uncursed, the serpent was swaying on its tail like an enraptured rope. Haven't I always maintained that our several ribs were the incriminating print of a bedeviled and embittered fist? February 29th. My room. A table covered entirely by a heap of magazines and books. They look like the 7 dresses of Latuda. They look like a man with a cane. They look like a careless bazaar on a market day. A small night table is littered with drugs, and half apothecary's shop. A bureau whose drawers never close well, like a man whose slant teeth forbid his mouth to shut well, carries the 2 brushes I have in my phonograph records. The mirror is cockeyed. How shall it save me to say, went out, to say, saw squirrels chasing one another through the sycamores? The sky as dry as Wordsworth Road was wet. To write, watched the loosened leaves kite slowly down. Another day, another dolor, nothing retained but a pun of Culp's contrivance. What the hell? Another day, broke out, encountered my wife shouldering aside a cloud. You'd look a lot better with a belt, she said. That roll around your middle makes your pants spread. I reply with a sad clown's grin that I suffer from a surfeit of imaginary pies. In the house, read death lists, poked about the basement, ducked my memories of children, groused. I've no mirror, cockeyed or otherwise, one wrinkled window. Above, a worn lace curtain like a rusted screen. My thoughts seem pulled from my head like the poetry of Rilke. The journal my other self, he once thought to call his book, the journal of my other book. How's that for this? Went out, saw hospitals, saw self, and if I cried as I am crying now, would Rilke heed me, or any of his angels? I once worked hard on him, and out of love, too, the way I still work in the garden now and then, or order canceled checks. Remember to buy milk. On my desk is a lamp whose base is a brass image of young hectoring Jesus, stolen from Germany, swaddled in underwear, transported by trunk. What will you do, God, when I croak? I am your jug when I am broke. I am your ale when I've gone flat. Your daily stint, your feathered hat. It won't mean nothing after that. Jesus is showing us a text from the good book, but the inscription is so worn I can't make it out. No doubt it's the usual. Think inscriptions are always that. If you are laughter, I am joke. January 28th. I shall not remember what happened on this day. It is a blank. At the end of my life I may want it, may long to have it. There was a new moon, that I remember, but who came or what I did, all is lost. It's just a day missed, a day crossing the line. A twinge today when I bit into a cookie. Watch it, what? Thoughts pulled from my head and collected the way hair wads in my wife's comb. Milk, mirror, thievery, the youthful brass Jesus, translated Rilke, I'm glad I don't have to live through the rest of your life, Liv said. I had a tooth out the other day. Curious and interesting, like a little lifetime. First the long-drawn drag, then the twist of the hand and the crack of doom. Women write them. They've nothing else to do but die into diaries. Subside like unpillowed fluff. Sunday, March 8th. I intend no introspection. I mark Henry James's sentence. Observe perpetually. Observe the oncome of age. Observe greed. Observe my own despondency. I will go down with my colors flying. Suppose I selected one dormant figure in every age and wrote round and about. Occupation is essential. And now with some pleasure I find that it's 7, and must cook dinner. Haddock and sausage meat. I think it is true that one gains a certain hold on sausage and haddock by writing them down. I intend no introspection. Mark that. Occupation is essential. When I had written what I had written, when I had reached the present, the dead end of history, to find it empty as an empty pantry, then I had fallen into the finis of my book, into its calm, all right, cold, yet angry conclusion, because it ceased in the silence which had silence for its fanfare. The blank page beyond did not even say blank, any more than death itself says death, or over, or finished, or done. I should not have liked to sup upon poor Virginia's sup. Did she mark how her own sentences secretly sentenced her? Did she observe how her watery grave was foretold by the very self she sheltered and lent her pen? Her petticoats, perhaps, like wet flags, her pockets weighed with stones, and the march of her suicide with an 8 in it like this entry. What did that other dame, Colette, command? Regard, Conrad, Chekhov, see, they said, sniff, pry, peek, peer, look, scrutinize. Ah, lovely, lovely, tender little look and love God and get lucky. Et tu auras le gras des grandes choses. Well, I intend no in. Out is all of it. Out of the print and over the cover, to grandmother's house we go. I study all their methods of desperate disappearance. My office chair is not a bit like this old throned, well-oiled wheel of my mad master's tongue. Yet I had her in it, stiff without style and with a mousy little squeak, Lou, like one of the dime store trinkets she sold, like a piece of freshly picked and bitten history. Fuck the facts, honey. Fuck 'em, and they will spread themselves like money, to leave you limp with after-longing. Why are you so mean to me, she said, when all I want is my fair slice of your life, its sordid boons. All I want, we always begin when we pretend we mean just a little. All I want to lay the world waste like its moon, and to understand why a body should be so appealing, so warm in winter, so cool through heat, so calm in my lone excitement. Yeah, that's enough. It's just going, but you get the idea. I mean, William H. Gass is a writer. He's probably one of the best in the last century in terms of pure, precise perfection on a sentence level. Like, you will read him and be stunned into just stupefying silence by some of his sentences. They are so well written, it is scary at times. But yeah. It's to the point where, it's to the point where you kind of don't believe it, but you do, because it took him, almost 30 years to write The Tunnel. Yeah. Anyway, next is Miss Macintosh, My Darling by Marguerite Young. Another absolutely massive book. I would honestly need a lectern to hold this comfortably. It's that big. 1,321 pages. It's really, 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 really good, though, which is why it's included in this video. Right, okay. Okay. Oh, I'm gonna take a drink. Oh wow, this is a long video. This is the longest video I've made in a while. This is crazy. Excusez-moi. Anyway, 5 pages in Miss Macintosh, my darling. Oh boy, sounds like an eternity, really, because of the way she writes, in a good way. The bus driver was whistling, perhaps in anticipation of his wife, who would be a woman with ample breasts, those of a realized maturity. It would be impossible that he did not have, from my point of view, a wife and children, indeed a happiness such as I cannot imagine to be real, even like some legend out of the golden ages. He had spoken numerous times during our journey of his old woman waiting, and he was going home, as if he were a Jehovah's Witness or a member of some other peculiar religious sect. His bushy hair grew almost to his shoulders. A witness would not perhaps drive a gray goose bus, even in this far country, this interior America, but his head was large, bulging, an old archaic dome of curled sculpture, and his eyes shone with gleamings of intensified personal vision. He drove, in fact, erratically, perhaps because of the heavy mist which all but blotted out the asphalt road, the limitation, and more than once, with the bus's sudden lurching. I had feared that we might veer off into a ditch, that himself and his 3 passengers would be killed, our dismembered heads rolling into a cornfield of withered corn stalks. He had whistled with each new escape, had turned and smiled back over his shoulder with a kind of serene triumph, even when the bus had brushed against the sides of a lumbering moving van with furniture piled up almost to the low sky. An upright piano, a rocking chair, a clothes horse, a woman's feathered hat bobbing at the top in the gray mist like some accompanying bird. Was he, after all, a bachelor, perhaps even some mad Don Quixote, chasing windmills? A virgin spirit, nobody, and his family life an emanation of any overactive imagination, really my desire for established human relationships. All along the way, he had been drinking from a whiskey bottle, quite openly, yet with many calls upon God, the angels, the archangels, Angel Gabriel. All along the way he had been singing, whistling, talking to himself, guessing what the old woman would say when she saw him, that she would certainly take his hat off. There were a sleeping couple, a pair of lovers, boy and girl, the only other passengers. They had gotten on at a dust-colored pottery town, in the burning sunlight, and shading their eyes, had tried to sleep through languorous, creaking miles of a too familiar landscape. The girl, thin and faded, perhaps prematurely old, was pregnant, yet resisted as if it were a deformity, her persituation of growth, there being nothing languorous in her appearance, nothing which should give itself up to nature. Her tiny face was covered with an artificial complexion, like a mask too heavy, streaked with gray, and her colorless eyes had the cold and transparent look of a being not satisfied, of being not filled with the light which comes from love. She was obviously dressed in what must have been her most beautiful finery, her most wonderful finery, I mean, though her ensemble was an accidental confusion, a chaos to the eyes of the bewildered beholder, she being too tightly laced and that protuberance under her heart standing out, as if it were a disease she wished to cover over with all these discursive details, which should not focus attention, yet drew attention to her. There were rings on her fingers, cheap cameos of enormous size and pieces of colored glass, many brass and wooden bracelets on her arms. a gold chain with a heart on her gauze-shrouded ankle, straw flowers piled upon the snub toes of her velvet slippers spiked with glass heels, which should not carry her far, velvet butterflies like pansies hovering upon the moth-eaten fox-fur collar of her green cloth coat, which would not close and was too tight, and did not cover her, coming only to her hips, and was of an old-fashioned style, with pointed sleeves and pointed cuffs and scalloped edges, and many velvet-covered buttons or marks where the buttons had been, small, tinkling bells. Moving when in her sleep she moved from side to side, yet not yielding to the powers of sleep which she resisted, as if they were the powers of oblivion and of death, and cascades of oblong 10-cent store pearls were dripping from her coral-colored ears, and her eyelids were painted with blue shadows, her eyebrows plucked to an invisible line, giving to her the look of a plucked and naked bird, and her lips were enlarged to an angular squareness by the purple lipstick she might have put on in a rigorous dream. She wore among all her heavy rings no wedding ring, and her hands were pale yellow, taloned by long red nails. Her fingers continually scratching the worn surface of an old-fashioned patent leather vanity case she carried in her lap. Her dress of sleazy silk was bright burned orange, painted with black sailboats sailing over purple trees, and red football players playing over steeples, and white skiers skiing over sailboats cascading to the hem, and locked acrobats, the entire field of outdoor sports, it seemed, being on her body, for her scarf was painted with spidery tennis players and tennis nets, and ice skaters skating on silver ponds, and red polo riders riding red horses, and there were little footballs hanging from her charm bracelets, tennis rackets and ice skates and golf clubs and numerous other trophies, some of field and stream, satin fishes running along the hem of her chiffon petticoat, edged with yellow lace, butterflies embroidered upon the knees of her thin silk stockings, and her skirts came up high above her knees, higher when she moved, showing her yellow satin garters and pairs of stuffed red velveteen hearts, dangling from ribbons and fairs which were painted powder puffs, and the coat seemed shrunken or a size too small, like something she might have worn in a remote youth. Her head was big on a narrow stem, her bleached yellow hair spirally built upward to a skying crown with a spangled net, and a hat which was a woven nest of dark and dusty funeral blossoms, and ivory twigs with a pink enameled branch on which was perched, precariously at the high altitude in the cold air current, one stuffed yellow canary with a moth-eaten wing, a glassy eye. Her stiff hand jogged in the aisle, a transparency through which one saw the knotted veins. She slept, narrow and turreted head stiff upright, her eyes suddenly opening, seeming like insect eyes of many faceted but cruel vision, her avid mouth and that small face open to complain, with sudden rushes of metallic speech, or with wild and hollow whispers against her neighbors, against her mother, her father, the other girl, the way she had been caught, the growth of another life inside her, this dark valley from which she might never return. The boy seemed, by contrast, all blissful stolidity and broad-faced innocence, his chestnut-colored hair tousled like a pony's on his low forehead, his skin burned to a dark, brick-colored red, as by some immensely blowing heat not of the sunlight. He wore a faded football sweater, the letter C across its front, red-stained, rain-washed dungarees, moccasins embroidered with white beads. Sleeping the miles away, his cheek against the cold bus window, his long-lashed eyelids closed, never opened, his lips placidly smiling. Oh boy. Now as the bus driver whistled, imitating the calls of birds to their mates, the bluebirds trilled, the woodpeckers becking, the murmur of quail, a baby's cry he had heard in the winter grass, the bright redness of the sky's reflection on the glazed bus window was disappearing, and with that redness the distinct dismal lurching of old Coca-Cola and aspirin signboards, tattered as tramps, which had accompanied our journey to the depths of southern Indiana, a state as yet unknown to me. The sky was drained and bloodless above the darkness of ethereal fields, as if it had suffered, in one slow moment, the ultimate transfusion, as if the veins were shriveled to nothingness. There was hardly a drop of red, where lately the red had swarmed and buzzed like thousands of wild honeybees. It was spring, but it might have been winter still. Another planet, the face of the dead moon. The earth was bare and cold, and the thorn trees without flower. The bus windows had turned to a cold, steaming grayness, as if only the ghost of the world were crying outside, as if the known world of familiar associations had disappeared, and that which remained must seem but the conspiracy of memories and dreams floating without purpose, without limitation. We had passed on this journey many curious pieces of rural architecture, an enormous coffee urn with its lid opened against the sky, a wigwam nightclub where, under a denuded oak, a melancholy buffalo was tethered, in Congress, as befitted washing on the line. We had passed a windmill, a leaning tower, Noah's Ark, the old women who lived in the shoe, and these were miles back, and there were now no buildings but that of the amorphous distance, little low-roofed houses, small as ruined birds' nests, a child's face at some near window, the individuality blotted out by the watery grayness of the Middle West. The train as small as a toy train, crossing a toy bridge. There was an endless grayness engulfing the bus, which moaned, the road before us no longer seeming to bisect space. The low-shaven fields, both low and whitish, the cattle humps of vague, distant, treeless, mole-colored hills. The scene was increasingly enlarged, like that which might have been the first creation, when only the Spirit of God, had moved upon the deep. It was the face of the ambiguous waters, of no boundary line, no shore, seen, in fact, to one who was accustomed to a great body of water, was oceanic, dotted by pale pools in the vapors of mist, and I should not have been surprised to see, drifting over these empty, unmarked meadows of the first creation, something of the last, a cloud of pearl-breasted seagulls, all crying with angelic voices, or moored at some far-receding horizon, a lost ship which would never reach port. We had passed far back on the road, the last harbor, a lighthouse, a shipwreck. Frozen lights appeared now like flares of crystal warning in the mist-shrouded dark plain, as if all the houses from which they emitted were traveling with us into an unknown distance from which no man returns alive, far away like smoke. There were plumed trees drifting, bent by the action of no winds, and no stars were visible. In the beam of our anarchic headlights, which barely cut through mist and darkness, there stood by the side of the road a tall man with a child perched on his lean shoulders, a double-headed man, staring at nothingness or beyond it. We were the intruders upon this plain of silence, and he shook his fist listlessly, perhaps figuring the dangers of walking on this road which now, suddenly turning, seemed to go back the way it had gone before. There was now no landscape. There was now no landscape but the soul's, and that is the inexactitude, the ever-shifting and the distant. I would never know the man's name, the organization of this fleeting image. What were his hopes, what were his disappointments? Yet he would remain forever ingrained on memory's whirling disk, the double-headed shape in curled mist, as tantalizing as my ignorance of life. As my life, I had been reaching for all my life, I had been reaching for the tangible, and it had eluded me, much like the myth of Tantalus. Much as if the tangible itself were an illusion. My life had been made up of just these disrelated, delusive images, hovering only for a moment at the margin of consciousness, then passing like ships in the night, even ships manned by dead helmsmen, by ghostly crews, by one's own soul at large. What was the organization of illusion, of memory? Who knew even his own divided heart? Who knew all hearts as his own? Among beings strange to each other, those divided by the long roarings of time, of space, those who have never met or when they meet have not recognized as their own the other heart, and that heart's weakness, have turned stonily away, would there be not, in the vision of some omniscient eye, a web of spidery logic establishing the most secret relationships, deep calling to deep, illuminations of the eternal darkness, recognitions in the night world of Voyager dreams, all barriers dissolving, all souls as one and united. Every heart is the other heart, every soul is the other soul, every face is the other face. The individual is the one illusion. So yeah, you get that. That's all 5 of them, but you get the idea with that one. I like it so much, that prose, because it perfectly captures what it's like to be lost in thought. The entire novel is like that, and there's really no real plot or no real incidents that happen. It's just meandering, and it's so good. I really don't know how else to describe it. It's just meandering, and it feels so distinctly Midwest in a way that I can't really describe, but I love because I grew up there. It's like, I don't know, I can just sense it in the prose. It's great. But yeah, I was 5 examples of books with prose that I enjoy more than any. Like, it's just what you get. It's like, it's better. It's prose that I really like and to read and like to write as well. I'm nowhere near as good as those people are, as the books I just read, but I'm getting there, I hope, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Thanks for watching, listening, I don't fucking care, bye.